Hey, folks, welcome into another episode of A Nichols Worth. Thank you for joining me here on the show. Appreciate everyone for joining me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following me on all platforms at Keaton D. Nichols. Once again, that's at Keaton D. Nichols. Thanks for joining me here on this Friday. Getting it popping on this Friday. We survived another week. That's important to note. Appreciate everyone for sticking through it. If you missed any of the shows through the week, make sure you check out anchor.fm /A Nichols Worth. And that'll bring you up to speed on all the episodes that you might have missed throughout the week. This is a good place to start. All right, so what's going on today? We're going to talk a little bit about Dean Cain. If you're unfamiliar with who that is, we'll talk about him a little bit later. He used to play Superman, but he had a pretty critical look of one of the superheroes of today, making headlines today, Captain America, and for all the best reasons that he's critical of this. We'll talk about that. Also, the 14-year-old who is just taking the world by storm right now. She won the Scripps National Spelling Bee. We'll talk about her coming up a little bit later in the show because I usually hate black firsts. Not that I hate the people that do them, but I hate talking about them. But this one is particularly special, so we'll talk about Zaila Avant-Garde. A great name, a fantastic name, by the way. Of a fantastic person as well, coming up a little bit later in the show. Before we get going into our first story, give this story a share on your timelines. If you're watching on Instagram, send this to a friend that you think might want to listen. That's the first part. The second part is, of course, make sure you leave comments during the course of the show. We like that kind of thing over here at A Nichols Worth, and it helps keep the conversation flowing. And I'll do my best to put those comments up here on the screen as well. So anyway, let's get on with our headlines. Our headlines today, of course, sponsored by Parkour Therapy. Make sure you check out parkourtherapy.com. Get 10% off all athletic apparel whenever you use the promo code ANW2021. So make sure you hit up parkourtherapy.com and take advantage. Let's get to our first story of the day. We'll start in politics. And the guy known as Biden, simply as Biden, right? He's also president of the United States right now, which is kind of a cool flex for you to have. He has declared war on anti-competitive practices with sweeping order. Now, I've learned something. Somebody taught me this a number of years ago. Usually when the government declares war on a particular thing, it's a pretty good bet that thing is probably going to win. So we've seen a few examples of this, like the war, most famously, the war on drugs. People kind of, jokingly say that drugs kind of won the war on drugs, and there's a lot of arguments for that, indeed. But anyway, it's usually a telltale sign once the government starts declaring war on a particular thing. That's usually it. Pretty much declare a victory for the other thing. Anyway, he's declaring war, according to this headline. Which appeared in The Hill, even though it doesn't say that there, declares war on anti-competitive practices. So what does that mean? There's a lot of things that this order is going to affect. There's 72 specific areas, if you will, things that this executive order seems to cover. But I want to talk about some of the tech-related things because I think those are the things that are most significant, especially for us in this moment. Our data and our information is important, as I've said. This is coming from The Hill. Under rules for big tech companies, Biden wants greater condemnation for mergers between technology companies, especially by dominant internet platforms, with particular attention to the acquisition of nascent competitors, serial mergers, the accumulation of data, competition by free products, and the effect of user privacy. The president also indicated that he wants to crack down on companies gathering personal information and will direct the FTC to create rules on surveillance and data acquisition. So the first thing that I thought about whenever I heard this news and what exactly it would be affecting, I thought, oh, I know this one. This is Facebook. This seems to be aimed at Facebook. A couple reasons why I believe that. The wording of this is kind of interesting. They say Biden wants a condemnation, if you will. He wants to reduce the mergers between tech companies, especially by dominant internet platforms, with particular attention to the acquisition of nation competitors, meaning the new startups that are just getting cracking. Biden wants to crack down on the big fish that are swallowing and eating up the smaller fish so that they can become bigger, in other words. And this has happened a lot. Other tech companies do this all the time too. I looked up the data and the information for Facebook just to kind of keep things in a linear conversation here. But if you go and just plug into the Googles, if you're ever bored one day, the list of mergers or acquisitions, whatever word you want to use, acquisitions by Facebook, you'll see a line. There's more than 90 line items here of companies, not just individual acquisition. I'm talking about companies, whole companies that they have purchased, that they just said, mine, we'll take this. More than 90. And there's some interesting names on here. Obviously, Instagram, probably one of the bigger ones here. But you've also got companies like WhatsApp. You've got Oculus VR, which is a Facebook company now. They bought all types of stuff. There's a gaming studio here, Ready at Dawn. I think they make different like zombie survival games and stuff like that. But they bought that studio. So there's tons of things on this list. And you think to yourself, well, what does a social media company need or want with these kinds of companies? Why keep buying them? They've acquired more than 90 companies, according to this website. On top, to throw into the mix, the mystery mix, if you will, the CEOs of these major tech companies have had to appear before Congress several times in the last 4 years. Remember Mark Zuckerberg? I don't know if people remember when Mark Zuckerberg had to speak in front of Congress. It looked like they were years behind. It looked like Congress was years behind. They were asking questions that seemingly had nothing to really do with the issue at hand. Mark Zuckerberg was talking them around in circles, but eventually what the message that you kind of get from this, from the CEOs coming in front of Congress, is they got asked a bunch of questions about how they do business. If you will, the lid was taken off of the social media machine by Congress. They didn't do anything. They didn't punish these companies at the end of the day. But they asked them a lot of questions about how they get data, how they use data, how it's manipulated across different companies, how they sell and purchase data. And oftentimes the ways that they were able to kind of get away with some of the data breaches that we've experienced and the Cambridge Analytica stories, kerfuffles that have exploded, the only way that we deal with that is by limiting this power. These tech companies have too much of it because they've been able to acquire other companies that do other things. Facebook does Facebook stuff, right? But if you now buy WhatsApp, if you buy Instagram, better example, right? If you buy Instagram in your Facebook, you now have an extended arm of social media that you could utilize for whatever you want. Now there's almost seamless integration between Facebook and Instagram, of course, taking over another significant part of the social media landscape. It technically wasn't a monopoly. They're not buying other social media giants. It's not like they went out and bought MySpace or Twitter or anything else like that. But what they are doing is acquiring smaller companies like WhatsApp that are very popular in some circles. Or maybe it's just the concept that's very popular with whatever company that they're buying, like Oculus, right? They buy this headset VR technology, a company with headset VR technology, and now Facebook can promote that as a product that they sell. You see it on commercials and things like that. Like, oh, let's see what you got, Oculus. That's a Facebook company. They're getting paid from that. And so when you have those multiple ways, some people might call it just smart business development, right? Like, if you're big and you want to remain on top, you got to continue eating the smaller fish, to that earlier analogy. But a part of this sweeping executive order, I was going to say legislation, but executive order coming from Joe Biden, there's going to be things put into place to discourage that from happening as much. It would also encourage the FCC to restore net neutrality rules, which were undone during the Trump administration. I always have to remind people as to the significance of what net neutrality is. And basically what it says is that the internet has to remain fair and free, not free, rather, it has to remain fair and at the same speed for everybody. Without net neutrality, the world that we live in now, internet service providers, your Verizons, your Comcast, your Time Warner, I don't even know if they still exist, but, other internet service providers can essentially sort of control how fast the internet is for what group of people. Now, we've been living under these rules since 2018. Has it really actually taken effect? Somebody's probably going to have to do a study to exactly prove the efficacy of that. But before 2018, we lived in a world where the internet was the internet. If you had access to the internet, you could access it as fast as your device or as your connection allowed you to cruise, if you will. And tech companies service providers couldn't provide different types of internet. They couldn't provide like a super fast internet for some people and then like a medium speed internet for other people. And they couldn't charge different tiers for that. Well, apparently this is one of the things that, of course, Joe Biden wants to kind of bring back as a part of this order. So good for him. Good for Joe Biden. He's doing presidential things. I'm glad to have a normal president. I get to talk about normal things. Certainly, I don't think that Biden is short of criticism. But I'll say this. What are we, 7 months into this administration? There have been things that you could criticize Biden on, maybe stylistically. Maybe if you wanted him to kind of do more, be a little bit more assertive and aggressive, I could see that. But, I mean, short of that, there hasn't really been a lot of criticism that I've had for Joe Biden. Like, widespread, like, things that are very obvious that I think need to change, like, ASAP. Were there some broken promises during the course of the campaign? Yeah. But if there weren't, it wouldn't be a real campaign. Come on. Let's be real. I think compared to what we got in the last 4 years, we're doing quite all right. Just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think in the comments section, especially if you are watching this on the replay. Let's get to our next story. Our next story comes from the Fox News. I love when we can get stories from Fox News. And you can see the headline there. Dean Cain says, "I'm tired of wokeism and anti-Americanism." Oh, boy. Somebody done got Dean Cain all riled up. They got Dean Cain all riled up. All right, so a little bit of background on who Dean Cain is for those born after 1985 or so. Dean Cain used to be Superman in the TV series Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. It happened before my time. Not that much before my time, but just barely before my time. Anyway, he was one of a few former TV stars that used to play superheroes that spoke out against Captain America, of all things. This is actually about Captain America. Now, this is maybe some sort of weird crossover. My comic book friends out there, my blurds, maybe can help me out with this one. This is Superman going across the universe to attack a Marvel superhero in Captain America. I haven't seen this episode yet. I haven't read this comic. Oh my gosh. So this quote was so good, I actually had to pull the clip. So that's what we'll do today. We'll listen to 20 seconds of Dean Cain being upset at Captain America. To set up the issue, here's why he's mad, right? In the first issue, or this most recent issue of Captain America in the comics, we're talking about the real deal comic field here. The real comics. Captain America, he's being reflective, right? And he's saying, look, I know I don't stand for the American government. I stand for the American dream. Right? But the American dream is too often turned easily into nationalism. And when that happens, the American dream becomes a lie, or it becomes a nightmare, however you want to put it, right? Which is a good point, right? Like Captain America to be questioning, hey, look, I represent this country. And in a sense, this character, Captain America, kind of goes with the ebb and flow of what one might feel about the country of America. If you're named Captain America, if I'm named Captain Pittsburgh, then I'm sure something should, be related to Pittsburgh here. Well, same sort of concept, right? So this most recent issue, The author has Captain America challenging the very idea of the American dream. And Dean Cain is not having any of this. Let's hear what Dean Cain had to say. Let's let him take over.
And I find, this wokeness, it's pervasive. It goes through everything. It's in our school system. The cool thing to do today is bash America. The comic books do it. The schools indoctrinate our kids. They do that. Our movies, our television shows is full of it. Celebrities, actors, athletes, the media, they love to bash America. I don't get it. I wonder to myself, do people ever travel outside of America? Do they go to other countries where they have to deal with governments who aren't anywhere near as fair as the United States?
Yeah, that's basically what he said there. Look, what is wrong with these people? How dare you challenge the idea of Americanism? Wokeness, my friends, is what's killing the idea of America. First of all, the new conservatives. This is what I call them the new conservatives. They get quite upset when you start challenging the good old United States of America. That's not a good look. You can't just do that, right? And I call them new conservatives because they do differ from their traditional conservatives that we've seen like pre-Donald Trump, right? Pre-Donald Trump conservatives also love America, don't get me wrong. But the new conservatives love America with a different type of fervor, if you will. A different type of fervor. We talked about this actually on the show last week with Chris Rogers. Critical race theory, right? Why is critical race theory such an issue amongst conservatives? It's an issue because it disrupts that heroic and golden image of the country, that America is just the greatest, not for any particularly provable causes or for any particularly provable reasons. America's the best because we say it's the best. And a part of remaining on top whenever you have that mentality is ensuring that the people that live in your country also feel the same way. They also have to feel like we live in the best country in the world. Never mind actually living in the best country. You just have to act like it enough. And that's what the new conservatives cannot stand. They cannot stand when you challenge this notion. He talked actually in that clip right beforehand about how, immigrants and people from all over the world, they want to come here because it's so great. It's so fantastic. As soon as, this is the key thing, right? As soon as you tarnish that idea of America, because America itself is just an idea. That's all it is. Like, this is not I don't want to say it's not a real country because then people might really get upset, but it's kind of not a real country. The country is not comprised of people who are native to this area and native to this land. This country is comprised of mostly the descendants of individuals and Europeans that came over here, stuck their flag in the ground, killed everyone around them, and licked the ground and said, "It's mine. Can't give it back now." Ha 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 ha. And they kind of started a country from there. They just kind of made things up from there. It's made up of those people and the descendants of slaves who helped build the country. And of course, immigrants and things like that too play a very important role. But point being, none of those groups that I just mentioned are the natives of this land. Okay, so America is an idea in the same way that if, like, when you were little, like, you and your friends might have, like, had a secret hideaway or a treehouse or something else like that. And maybe that treehouse was like your base or something. I don't know what kids played, but let's say it was your base. It's just an idea. That treehouse is not it was not yours as a kid. It wasn't any of your friends. It didn't belong to the tree or the yard or anyone else. It belonged to probably someone's parents or landowner, right? But when you were in there, you made up this concept. You said, "This is my fort. This is my safe space. This is where me and my friends hang out." It was an idea. That's all it was. It wasn't yours. It was just an idea. That's how America is. It's just an idea. And so when you start challenging the idea of America, this idea that it's, fair and free to everyone and it's the greatest country in the world and that everyone should want to come here and that we're number one, as soon as you start challenging that notion, you are really digging into the whole purpose of this country. What is the purpose of this country if it's not the best? What are you going to do? I think a lot of us don't feel like that. A lot of us don't feel like this country is the best, and that we should strive to keep it the way it is to ensure that kind of greatness. There's a lot of us that feel other ways about the country, that we've got some work to do, that there are more things that we have to fix, if you will, about this country before we start talking about proclaiming it to be something great, proclaiming it to be something that we would love to claim for ourselves, love to say I'm proud of. It's hard for a lot of people to say that, not because we hate America, because a critical look at America forces certain people to look at the country like that. If you have the privilege, if you will, of a Dean Cain, of being a white man in this country, then you have the privilege and the possibility of thinking of this country as something other than a dearth of freedom for its citizens. I think that's important. I think that we will eventually have this time when we think of this country as something, different. It'll feel like ours when all of us aren't included in what this country is. We haven't had that since the inception of this country. All peoples have not been on a level playing field, even to this day. To this day. We have made tremendous strides since day one, sure, but we aren't anywhere close. I'm talking, we are not anywhere close to where we should be as a country if we're talking about even being half of what we proclaim to be. Got a lot of work to do. And I think until that moment comes, we're going to be very uncomfortable with whatever we come across. Let's get to some comments here. Jovan Alford comments in on the YouTube. He says, is this Sam Wilson's Captain America? This is not Sam Wilson's Captain America, actually. This is Captain America, and I can't remember. I don't know what issue specifically this is. I'll look that up for you after the show. But no, this is not referring to Sam Wilson, who is an African-American character in the Captain America storyline. It's not referring to him. This is just a regular good old Sam Rogers, white Captain America, who is questioning that idea of the American dream. I think it's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Let me know what you think in the comment section. We're going to go to a quick break. When we get back on the other side, we'll talk about the 14-year-old basketball prodigy who it's a first that I actually don't mind talking about. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Wake up. Look in the mirror. Tell me what you see. It's you. Only you can decide to forget about yesterday's failures and focus on today and tomorrow's success. We all share the same 24 hours. Your dreams won't chase you. Chase your dreams. Don't allow the world to run you. Run the world. Don't talk about the ladder. Climb it. Don't dip your toe into the pool. Dive in. That's the only way you'll learn how to swim. It all starts with you. And in the end, only you can change you.
That's facts. That's facts. Make sure you check out parkourtherapy.com. Leave your comments in the comment section if you're listening on Instagram or you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. That's where we're all broadcasting from. That's what the top of my screen indeed says. And you can become a monthly subscriber or donate to the podcast right at that link, anchor.fm/a Nicholsworth. Would really help me out here on the program. I appreciate that. Getting on with our last story of the day. I told you it wasn't going to be long today. It wasn't going to be long, but I did want to end on a very positive note. Now, I should say that I am not a fan of black firsts. I have continually not been a fan of black firsts. And by black firsts, I just mean, when we hear news reports or we hear stories about, such and such has become the first African-American to, lead the water department in Kennebunkport, Maine, or this is the first African-American judge in, Sussex County or something. Maybe there was a point in period of time in the United States when being the first black person to do something was actually, sort of newsworthy according to the culture, which is sad that it is newsworthy at any point in the culture, given the background of the country. But I think now they serve as very awkward reminders of the idea that we had a very troubled past here in this country, one that was intentionally unfair to people of a certain race and of a certain color. And it also exposes the idea that we're not quite there to where we should be as to being over these problems. When we talk about Black First, it exposes both of those issues. And it's awkward. It's awkward because these things are always talked about in a positive manner, as they should, by the way. These Black Firsts are always an accomplishment, and accomplishments shouldn't be reduced here in any way, shape, or form. But the discussion themselves can oftentimes go in a direction where you say, oh, man, how in the world, in the, X amount year history of this company or this organization or this competition, is this the first time that a Black person has come out on top, right? So that's kind of why it tends to be a little awkward for me to celebrate, if you will, Black Firsts. And shout out to my cousin Austin, who on Facebook earlier actually was asking about Juneteenth within this same sort of context, right? Like, should we really be celebrating this kind of thing? Like, sure, it's a good thing that happened. Like, yes, this was very needed, and I'm glad it actually happened. But should we be celebrating this? It's a question that, it's hard. It's hard for a critical thinker and somebody that's critical of the country that we live in to be able to hear news of Black First and just be like, okay with it. But anyway, that's how I normally am. As I said, this is the exception to that, of course, because today I learned about 14-year-old Zaila Avant-Garde, who, in addition to having an absolutely fantastic name, won the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Now, that's really cool. That is an achievement and an accomplishment. It's a long, prestigious competition that goes back to 1925. I looked this up. The first winner of the very first Scripps National Spelling Bee in 1925 was Frank Newhouser. If anyone's appearing on Jeopardy in the next couple of weeks, go ahead and stow that one away. But anyway, it's a long history. 1925, what is that? 95 years? I have to be doing that math wrong. Like 95 years of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. And Zaila, 14-year-old Zaila, becomes the first African-American to win the Scripps National Spelling Bee in like 95 years. That's insane to me. This news would have been a little less depressing, except for the fact that Zaila is an absolute beast. Hold on, let me bring these highlights up because this story doesn't do justice until you see everything that's going on here. Sorry again for my Instagram folks if you just want to go ahead and look that up. But look at these highlights. This is the National Spelling Bee champion. I didn't put up the wrong video, by the way. This is her. And she's absolutely dominating the competition. Good for her. Zaila, just 14 years old, as I mentioned. And she also holds a number of records here. She holds the record for most balls juggled in 1 minute. That's with 4 basketballs. Most dribbles in 30 seconds with 4 basketballs. These are world records, okay? These are not records for like little girls or something. These are records, for everybody. Adults, men, women, everybody included in this. Okay, most basketballs dribbled by one person simultaneously. She did 6. Are you kidding me? I was watching an interview a little bit earlier that said that Zaila practiced for like 7 hours a day. She practiced in preparation for this spelling bee. So the idea that, she could be this good at basketball, this is only one highlight tape, by the way. There are a number of these going around at just how good at basketball that she really is. She hopes to play on an under 16 all-star team, if you will, that I think that she will be able to do as well, because the type of dedication that it takes to be this good at either one of these things, to be this good at basketball or, spelling, you got to put in the work. And so far, she's shown that she could put in the work for both. And so at the critical point in her career, or in her life, rather, I should say, I'm already putting a career on her, but at the critical point in her life, when there's going to be a split, and there's going to be some people that are going to want her to choose what she does. You should be a basketball prodigy, or you should be this, sort of education prodigy, if you will, for lack of a better term. When she gets to that point in life, she should reject the urge to just pick one. She should do both, and as many other things that she could pile into her life as she can handle responsibly, of course. I see great things for her. This should be the norm of what we should be expecting, right? Not the norm per se, but this should be what we're expecting, rather. The stories that we like to hear on a Friday. She's taken over the hoops court. She's taken over education. She's going to be the smartest basketball, football, anything else player in the world, right? That's what I see for her. When we're talking about in baseball right now, a baseball player, Shohei Ohtani, who's pitching and batting, and everyone thinks that that's impressive. And I do think that that's impressive. But this is probably the most impressive black first I've heard of, maybe ever, but certainly in a long time. Good for her. I wish her nothing but success moving into the future. Don't forget, you can follow me on social media at Keaton D. Nichols. That's at Keaton D. Nichols. And you can follow the show at anchor.fm/a Nicholsworth. That's also where you can catch up on any episodes that you might have missed out on in the last couple of weeks. So glad to have 2 weeks under our belt. We'll be back after the weekend with more news from the weekend, more stories, more interviews, more things that impact you on the other side. So make sure you check us out 8 p.m. on Monday. Until then, everybody have a great and fantastic weekend, a safe weekend as well. I'll see everybody